Okay, hold on. This is the third video I have filmed today. And I'm lowered you because I'm tired of sitting on my foot. I probably should have lowered you before then. So this is much more comfortable. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Sarah. This is the last video I'm filming today, thank God. I like to talk about books in my basement, and I'm going to talk about the, four-ish romance books that I have read in the last month or so. We're going to start this off with a DNF, mostly because I was so amused by this book, even while I was DNFing it at the same moment. That I just don't want to mention it. That is My Dark Romance. I picked this up just because I saw it recommended somewhere. I don't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about the authors. I still don't. I don't want it to know anything at this point. But seriously, y'all. Y'all, I DNF'd this. I think, was it chapter 1? It may be chapter 1 or 2 when the hero was reminiscing on his history, and he's talking about when he's like 12. He's in the car with his dad, and he's talking about how hard he was as a 12-year-old, how like stoic he was that he never liked sweets. Said in all seriousness, my friends, what? No, absolutely not. I can get on with a like dark melodramatic story, but when you start making these like broad general like statements like I was 12 and didn't love sweets and never had, I'm outie. I'm out. No thanks. I just find it very hard to believe. I'm sorry. It's very much not for me. If you enjoy it, I'm very happy for you, but I couldn't at that point. My suspension of disbelief was gone. All the way, you know, in another country, would not return. Returned to Kindle Unlimited. That's not gonna be one for me. So we'll get that out of the way. The other two electric? Who am I? I need to stop talking. The other two books I don't have physically was Real and the 710 Splits. We'll talk about Real first. This is a favorite, and I fully see why people love this, but this book suffered because of timing on my part. I really enjoyed this, but I picked this up the week before I quit my job. And so that week I was reading it and I loved it. Kennedy Ryan's writing is just exceptional. I really loved the way she crafted a sentence and how she set a scene and described characters and her whole setup. Really loved it. I got about 30% of the way through it by the end of the week, and then that first week of no work when I was doing a full-time parent thing and trying to find my new groove, completely lost the book. Put it down, did not pick it up for like a week and a half, and when I picked it up, I was completely disinterested. So this one just suffered from timing. I ended up giving it like a 4. I liked it, but I lost the connection I had to it, and it was completely my fault, but I really did enjoy this. I fully see why people love this. And I do very much recommend it for romance fans. It was fantastic. It is the story of a young actress who is seen by a director who is wanting to do this biopic about a not as famous as she should be Black singer from the, what is that era called? From like I think it's like the 20s and 30s was the period. And he is wanting to do this biopic on her, but he wants a very specific actress for her. And he knows when he sees that actress, he'll know. He sees our main character and he knows she's going to be the lead in this movie, and they also start to strike up a forbidden romance. There is also a very sweet and somewhat tragic queer love story in this as well, in the history of the biopics, which I really, really loved that bit. But again, totally suffered from timing. I enjoyed it, but by the end I was very ready to put it down because I was just in a completely different mindset from when I started it, and that's okay. The other ebook that I read was an ARC, and that was the 710 Split. I think it was by maybe her name was Carmen? Anyway, the screen's on, the title and cover is on the screen. I had fun with this. This was short. It was a lot of fun. This is about two former friends. They fell out of friendship in high school when they were getting ready to go to college. They were both on the bowling team in high school, and they go their separate ways. They meet up again when one of them moves back into town to be a teacher at the school the other one already teaches at. And they form a bowling team, which in and of itself, that act was a little bit complicated. but they have to be co-captains of the team, which therefore means that they have to reestablish their relationship, their friendship, and another relationship grows out of that. That's the word I wanted. Another relationship grows out of that. Like I said, really enjoyed this. I do have some qualms in that there was a lot of stuff that should have been on page and wasn't. One of our main characters, her mother, says some really atrocious things about the other main character, and we didn't see any of the resolution and reconciliation on page. We also were teased a lot of information about things that had happened in the past, but were never actually shown on page, the characters learning or sharing that, but they did with each other because they talk about it, but we don't actually find it out as readers, so I was a little confused. And I also found one of the main characters, her family, was very combative within itself. Like, her sisters were all very mean to each other and to her. Like, the language and the way they talked to her was very combative. And that was, that made me uncomfortable. Like, I don't get along with my siblings all the time, but I live in the South. We're all passive aggressive here. I hate it, but we are. So it's just my personal preference. So fun, not the best. You know, if you sounds very interesting and if you want a short, fast, and fun romance, this is the one for you. Also, it's got bowling in it. I never knew bowling could be so interesting. Who would have thought? And finally, my favorite book, romance book that I read recently is A Letter to the Luminous Deep by Sylvie Catherall. This I have talked about on so many videos that I have scrapped over the past month. This is a epistolary novel, takes our current time period, is between the siblings of another pair who were falling in love and were also writing letters to each other as they try to determine what happened to that pair in the past. I have forgotten names because, like I said, it has been a hot minute. So in the past, E and Henry begin to strike up a correspondence because E sees a fish, it was like a fish or an eel she had not recognized, and she wrote a letter to Henry to find out what it was. They strike up a correspondence and then a relationship. A year later, they have disappeared, and the underwater house that E lived in has seemingly exploded. So then in that time period, in the current day in the story, we are following Sophie and Varen as they try to piece together the letters that E and Henry exchanged to find out what actually happened to their siblings. It's been a year, they've been like living in grief, and finally the two of them together decide, we have these letters, we each have a side of the correspondence, let's read them together and we'll find out what happened, why they were in the house together, how they knew each other, and what happened to them. It's so good. Oh, it's so good. This is a cozy underwater fantasy. If you're reading books for our fantasy bingo, this takes place, a huge chunk of this is under the water. I'm going to say 75 to 80% of this is under the water. So this is your pick for the bingo board, and this I believe will fit for the hard mode. This is fantastic. I wish I could tell you enough big words to convince you to read it. If you don't like epistolary novels, I fully understand you're not going to enjoy this. But if you enjoy epistolary novels, you're going to enjoy this. Every bit of this is epistolary. There is no narrative prose. It is all epistolary. We see the focus is truly in this, for me, on the platonic friendship between Sophie and Varen. But we do see the romance between E and Henry develop. And while I liked the romance, I believed it, I was truly committed to the platonic relationship and friendship that was developing between Sophie and Varen and their families. And this follows, we see not only E and Henry's story, but we also get Sophie's story. And Sophie is a researcher. I should say this is a fantasy novel set in a world where people live either on, there is one island on this landmass on this planet that they live on, and everyone else lives in floating cities. There are a few people like E and Sophie. No, yes? Hold on, which one's which? Sophie, yes. E and Sophie grew up under the water in an underwater house, one of the first of its kind. A freestanding underwater house. So there are some people who live underwater, but everybody else lives on these floating cities that are both in and out of the water. So Sophie is a sort of researcher who explores this ocean that they all live in, this worldwide ocean. and we start to get hints of a bigger, more intricate, more kind of trippy fantasy world and things going on through her storyline. So you get really invested in that, and that's really what helped me invest more in the platonic friendship between Sophie and Varen. I haven't read a book that's pitched as a romance where I enjoyed the romance but really enjoyed the platonic relationships so much more in every way. This is the book, and I loved everything about it. So I really recommend this. I hope some of that made sense, because it is a little complicated to explain because it does jump time periods and it is all epistolary. But once you get the feel for it and once you can go with the flow of it, that was another unintentional pun, then you will really love it. At least I think so. I did. This is the first book in a series called The Sunken Archive. I will be continuing, don't you worry, and I will report back on those as well. But that is it for all of the romance books I've read in the last month. I do have some romance paranormal books in my paranormal wrap-up. If you have not watched that, I will, if it's up before this one, I will link it. If it's not, look for that to come. And I will most assuredly have more of these coming. I have a few romance books on my TBR for this month and next month. My TBR is... I'm so behind. We're not going to talk about it. Again, thanks for watching, y'all. I hope to see what y'all think down below. Let me know if you've read this, if you loved it, and if you didn't, that's okay. You don't have to tell me that you hated it, but I loved it. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Thanks for watching, y'all. Bye.